Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon, and I am excited to welcome you here to the Tansson Talk Show, where our mission here is to bring people together. I'm always excited to bring you this show, but I'm even more excited to welcome my guest for today, Alex. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. And so, first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a very productive week for me. I've been a busy guy, but not in a bad way. I've been able to stay on top of it, I'd say.
Well, that's definitely good to hear. And so, yeah, like I said, I'm very excited to have you on. And so, Alex, if you're able to give us the pleasure of introducing yourself for the watching or listening audience here today.
Sure, I'd love to. I love talking about myself. So, I am a 20-year-old sophomore public relations student and the secretary of the University of Maryland chapter of the PRSSA, recently appointed. So, I've only been to one meeting yet. I'm still learning the ropes. Um, As for other stuff that's worth mentioning, I have a YouTube channel called Cytonox, which is my other kind of my personal endeavor that I run, where I do video game content, and I have about 16,000 subscribers on there, which is not nothing. It's nice to earn an honest dollar for playing video games and screaming about them to people.
Well, I love it, and I'm just so excited to to speak with you. And so, I guess I'll actually get started with saying, so how long have you been doing your YouTube channel?
Our first upload was the day before my 17th birthday, so December 2nd, 2021, maybe 2020, I think. No, it might be 20. It's been about 3 years, a bit over 3 years is the exact answer, though.
Well, that's definitely good to know. And so, ultimately, what got you all started? Because I believe it's you and one of your friends, if I remember correctly.
Yes, my friend Jack Martin, my day one. I met him on the first day of kindergarten. I actually just got off the phone with him a little bit ago. We've known each other for a while, and we both liked video games growing up. We liked YouTubers. I'd watch them all the time as a kid, and my dad would complain that they were talking too loud, yada, yada. And I thought it'd be cool that maybe I could one day be the guy. I don't know if kids watch. I don't know if parents would be too fond of some of the stuff I say on there, but parents are more lax about that thing anyways. And it's cool to think that the old generation is aging out. They're getting up there. The all time greats are starting to retire, make families, do other stuff. So why not me? It could be. Figured I might as well take a stab at it.
That's such a fair point. Yeah, and I mean, that's pretty cool that, that both of you were able to do that, and glad that you were able to do that with your day one friend at that.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. A lot of people fall out of touch even with their high school friends, so it's kind of a miracle. I don't know too many people who have known someone for that long, and it's satisfying that I can basically make I don't know if I'd call it a living. It's maybe a fourth of a living from just doing what I would enjoy doing in my free time, anyways. Which is how they say you want to handle your job. Which is how I feel about PR. Also, I happen to find it very interesting as a field. And I feel confident that I've picked the right path.
That's really great to hear that you feel confident that that you picked the right path. And so, but going into like, I guess the start of your YouTube journey a little bit further. So ultimately, like, when did you, both of you decide that, then was the right time to, to do it? And I guess who came up with it first?
It was hard to say. I remember the day that we did it was in August, so way before our first upload. Our first task was thinking of a name, and we ended up settling on Cytonox, Cytonox, because we looked up like cool Latin root words, and we found Cyto for cell and Nox for night. It has no actual bearing on what we do. We just thought it sounded cool. We also found out that there was a protein powder of little renown sharing our name. Like after we made it, like, oh crap, these guys already beat us to it. But they're somehow even more relevant than we are. So we beat them out already.
Well, hey, well, that's a win for you right there.
Yeah, it was. So we were satisfied about that. We looked into like all this stuff. Like, do we have to purchase the domain? Is there copyright issues? No, I don't even know if they're still operated or being run. I've never heard hide nor hair. They've never contacted us like, hey, that's our name, or something like that. Our first success didn't come for a while. Our name of the game was basically just beating our head into a wall with making videos every week on Wednesdays until eventually one of them would take off. And that's what happened. In October 2021, we made a video on the game Metroid Dread, which got like 100,000 views almost shortly after, because we just covered it really fast. I stayed up all night doing it. I just worked faster even than the game reviewers who got it early. And we got it out, and it made us get above 1,000 subscribers, which is when you're able to monetize. you stop getting like shadow banned by the algorithm for being irrelevant. Basically, they let you out of the dungeon at 1,000. Basically, so that was when we really started. Like, all right, we're actually getting momentum here.
I love that, and I mean, and that's great that both of you were able to, I mean, to make it there, and yeah, and especially like to beat some of the the pros at it as well.
Yeah, there's an element of that. There are a couple other people who do similar stuff to what we do, ranking videos for boss fights, like powerful enemies, from worst to best. So you start with the dregs and work your way up to the gems, basically. And there's the biggest guy who does it has like 300 something thousand subscribers. And that was the one thing that drove us crazy is people would accuse us of ripping him off for the concept. And it's basically just an expanded version of the top 10 format. So we'd get really irritated that people would accuse us of ripping it off when, everyone's been doing the Watch Mojo thing for who knows how long. That kind of went away once we established ourselves and kind of got a decidedly different tone. Our gimmick is that we both commentate on the video, not live, but we just alternate each segment. So it's got two people running it, and our rankings are averaged between the two of us as kind of a compromise. So that was kind of our unique gimmick, I guess.
Well, like I said, but it definitely has been working out, and so, but I mean, that's really cool that both of you were able to, I mean, to work on this, and so I presume that when you started, that you were still in high school at that point.
Exactly. It was over the COVID year, which is when a lot of people, I think, started finding new stuff to do. I was pretty unhappy. I would wager 10th grade was the worst year of my life. And first half of 11th grade, I was getting by. I'm not a terribly sociable person, so I wasn't super bothered by the quarantine. But I just felt like I was like, dude, I do nothing but play video games all day. I was like, wait, I can get paid to play video games all day. Uh, so that was the first evolution. Lots of other stuff kind of coalesced to put me in a better mood. I worked out a little bit at that time, which I don't do too much now, but it was kind of a good thing to do for that point in time. Uh, it's just good to, that saying, idle hands are the devil's playthings. It's kind of when you have nothing to do, you just get kind of like bummed out. You don't feel like you're doing stuff. And it's great to have a purpose, a direction, and feel like, the next day you will be better off than you were on the last, essentially.
Yeah, I mean that truly is such a great philosophy, and so I guess actually going back a little bit, so prior to to the YouTube channel starting, I'm I presume that of course you had interest in in video games, but I guess how was your life prior to starting YouTube?
Yeah, essentially, I would say I was a bit of a late bloomer socially, in that a lot of people, at the time they hit high school, they're chasing girls, they're getting involved in intramural sports. I had no extracurriculars at all. I had my friend group from middle school, basically, and I wasn't like a friendless guy. I was still hanging in there, but I wasn't terribly active on most fronts of life. My daily routine would be I wake up, go to school, go home, play video games for however long, and then go to bed. I really had nothing going on. Uh, and I wasn't interested in like going to parties or getting a girlfriend or whatever until like 10th grade, which coincidentally is the worst one because once you start caring, that's the learning curve where you have to get used to navigating that new aspect of life. But I'd say very much kind of a kid until I was like 16 or something. So uh, that was my life more or less. It's not as bleak as it sounds. I was having a good time of it, but
Yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense though. And since you mentioned that around the time that you all started was around the time of your birthday as well. So
Mhm.
was that just a coincidence or was that intentionally planned like that?
That was a coincidence, actually. I don't think I would. I mean, I was aware that it was my birthday, but I think we just decided, like, all right, our first video was done. We spent a lot of effort Googling the best day to upload. And for some reason, it was Wednesday. And we're like, Wednesday? Really? That doesn't sound right. We're like looking up all this SEO stuff. We found out that we actually misread the thing, and Wednesday's the worst day to upload. But it's kind of a funny tradition now because we realize it doesn't impact that much when you upload stuff. That's not a huge thing you'll find. So we just stuck with it. It became kind of a running gag that we just chose the worst possible day to upload as our routine, and we still do it to this day.
Well, that just shows that both of you beat the odds.
Yeah, exactly. We surmounted the challenging sheer cliff of making it out of the mud.
Yeah, and so in transitioning, of course, from from high school to college, or I know, of course, you are in college, but is your friend in college as well?
Yeah, he's down at Virginia Tech, so not too far from University of Maryland, like 2 3 hours south in Blacksburg. Probably kind of close to where you are, it sounds like. But uh, it's been not that difficult to work things out, honestly. Whenever we need to communicate, we go on FaceTime, as we did earlier today. We just work out, what needs to be done, who's going to script what, share this file, that file, who's editing what video. Uh, Using DaVinci Resolve is what we use. It's free, although we have the paid version, and it's very good. But yeah, the logistics haven't been too challenging, I would say.
That's good at least that that both of you are able to, I mean, to still work things out and still be in constant communication, especially like we were mentioning earlier, for being a day one friend. So that truly is an unbreakable bond for you both right there.
Yeah. I'd say that is one great thing about the YouTube channel also, is it's very, very unifying. We have a shared battle here. Whenever some guy's moaning and grumbling in our comments section, we'll be like, dude, look at this guy. What's he, he's gnashing his teeth at this nonsense, stuff like that. So there's kind of a fun solidarity thing going. We have a whole community. We have a Discord server that we run, that I'm fairly active on. It's nice talking to people. We have a Patreon that we recently reworked to have like 1 week early access to videos, stuff like that. So it's nice having, a community where the common denominator is they think we're funny. That's very reassuring.
Well, nevertheless, though, I mean, I'm glad that you were able to, both of you were able to build a community and, yeah, I mean, around what you love. I mean, not everyone can say that they truly, I mean, honestly do what they love. And, yeah, and you started when you were 17.
Yeah, it was an early start, and I think that is one of the most vindicating things, is feeling like you're ahead of the curve and that you're younger than people and doing stuff. I thought of this because I used to go on LinkedIn and I'd see people my age have like 500 plus connections or whatever. I was like, these LinkedIn warriors are terrifying. These guys have like, I'm thrilled to announce I'm starting my internship at quantum physics lab in New York. We're going to be designing black hole bombs or whatever. I'm like, dude, I'm like taking Stat 100 or something. What are these guys doing? But I decided, what, I probably could, if I was so inclined, work my way up the ladder of my field, PR, and that's kind of just what I started doing. And it turns out to be tremendously satisfying. And I was like, okay, these guys maybe had the right idea. So I decided I'd adopt their strategy and become a bit of a LinkedIn warrior myself.
I love that. And yeah, and I completely get that too. I'm friends with so many people who are in just such amazing fields, and especially I have a lot of friends in aerospace as well. And so, as I mentioned, my nice communication stuff, I mean, I know while, of course, all of our stuff is valid, it's still sometimes like, oh, okay, cool. Y'all are like building rockets. I'm
Yeah.
studying how we communicate. But I mean, everything has a time and a place.
For sure, yeah. It's very much also one thing that was sort of, some find it demoralizing, but I think it's kind of the opposite actually, is a lot of the time that people getting these positions, or maybe you don't know exactly what they do, and they always, of course, phrase it in the most glorious sounding way. So you're seeing their highlight reel compared to your behind the scenes, is a quote I saw somewhere. I don't remember who said it, but people get down in them like, oh, they're doing that, and meanwhile I'm just a schmuck. They're probably more or less similar off to you, other than just like they decided to apply to stuff. That's one of the biggest things I found. My mom always told me, just show up, just look for things to do. A lot of things that you have to like apply for. Okay, maybe not a lot of things. That could be an overgeneralization. But if you just go knocking on doors and kind of, make a nuisance of yourself, don't let them forget who you are, that can get you pretty far. Like, I'm not a cinema major, but I love movies. I'm like an honorary one. I just showed up to the advisory department. I couldn't take this one class officially because I wasn't a cinema major, but I walked through like a thunderstorm. Basically, it was horrible, like last February or something. And I showed up to the office and I was like, hey, can I please take cinema 301 or 302? And they just like let me. They're like, sure. I mean, no big deal. Or like the PR Society, I recently became treasurer. All I did was I went to the table at the Second Look Club Fair, and I was like, hey, do you have any positions open? And they say, yeah, we have 3. Take your pick. I chose secretary because it sounded like an optimistic reading puts me at third in charge. And I was like, sure. Now that worked.
That is so true. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the things too where even like you go for even like the list of like awards you can get for certain things, whatever. It's like you have to apply for those, and it's like now. I mean, sometimes it might happen, but for most cases, it's not like you just randomly gifted something. It's like, oh well, here's this giant award for doing what you do, and as much as I'd love that, and in some cases it happens, but yeah, truthfully, you have to apply yourself, literally and mentally.
Yeah, for sure. That's the other thing, is I'm not going to claim I'm like extremely qualified yet since I've never worked an official position, but I have been working to get ahead of the curve and learn as much as possible before I've even got my first, internship or whatever. Like I've been looking like, okay, Asana, what's this? That's the tool people use, or, learning stuff vaguely outside my major that's kind of like business admin related just to kind of know what people do. Uh, my goal is to be the best at it. Basically, that's taller, but why not? You might as well. And it's interesting also as far as PR goes. There are a lot of different, you could say, role models, and like Bernays, the guy who most people accredit a lot of stuff to, like the development of modern consumerism. Basically, that guy was a genius, and he wasn't a people person at all. He was a bit of a curmudgeon, I'm told, and not even great at speaking people one on one. But he knew science. He was a scientist, kind of the way Brian De Palma is to cinema. I don't know if that analogy makes. He was very scientific and methodical, more than like a fanboy like Tarantino or Scorsese. Basically, I think that I could bring some kind of merger of this. I'd say I have decent people skills. Maybe I tend to yap a bit longer than some, but I like to think I know that stuff and the sciencey social stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I definitely can very much relate to that because like I like learning a little bit of anything and everything, and even stuff outside of the field. And so like I know for high school and even going into my undergraduate education, yeah, I was doing stuff and like a little bit of STEM stuff and and learning about, like for instance in high school I took a college credit class from NASA that was in Earth System Science, and it's like and so I was an intern for them twice, in the years that followed. And so as the fellow interns are mentioning their field, it's like, well, yeah, though I am outside of the STEM field, it's like, yeah, I still love what I do. And so it's kind of fun being able to explore the different little avenues.
Oh, for sure. That's another kind of side hobby of mine. Is my goal is as difficult as this sounds to know a little bit about basically everything. Like I've got this one book called Why We Talk by this French guy that's pretty interesting. It's not at all like a pop psychology book. It's super technical, and my mom was going and she's like, Alex, I give up. Here you go. You can take this off my hands. And it's pretty interesting, but it's very dense about like what makes human communication different from animals. And interestingly enough, the answer so far seems to be gossip, or at least the ability to talk about things that don't ostensibly serve a purpose for survival. And even any argument that it's necessary for socialization is kind of hard to prove, but no other animal does that. Like a lot of animals, for example, can't talk about anything that's not presently where they are, like visible to them, things like that. So that's one of many subjects that I just find interesting to know about if it comes up.
That really sounds fascinating. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the things too where I don't know if like I don't know. It's one of the things where it's just like, okay, it's like here's something really interesting, informative, and it might be completely random too. But I consider myself a research enthusiast just because like I love being able to research a little bit of anything and everything. And some of the stuff doesn't have as much practical knowledge, but at the same time though, it's really fascinating being able to just learn just a little bit, 1% more than you did the previous day.
Yeah, like just recently, what have I been up to? I've been looking into kind of like theology stuff and like religious esoterica because that's not super well known. Like you have all this you have Gnosticism, that is some kind of unusual stuff in there. Uh, you have just basic religions in general. Not many people know all the tenets. It's cool stuff to know because most people mostly have their familiarity limited to like their time in Sunday school as a kid, and then maybe they grew up, stopped going to church because they got bored of it or something like that. So I'm by no means an authority. The average Joe probably knows more than I do if they actually consistently go to this stuff, but I like having a basic familiarity with it to just know what it's about.
And so I did want to take a little bit of a sidestep too. And so, of course, we are in the spring 2024 semester. And so, overall, how has your semester been treating you thus far?
So far, it's been good. The main challenge, of course, is learning Japanese, which is tremendously difficult. I just got out of class earlier today. Since I have it every day, it's 5 days a week, and it's pretty merciless. The professors are great. It's just like it's a lot of material. The grammar is not brutal. It's not nonsensical at all, but it's just different from American. They only have two tenses, present and non-present, basically. Lots of stuff like that. Lots of vocab gets dropped in large chunks. I'm not horrible at it, but I wouldn't say I'm like, even intermediately fluent yet. I know a little bit of French, which I remember an astounding amount of from high school. Japanese is definitely kind of a personal endeavor. I just thought it'd be cool to know, be able to read. So that's been the hardest part. Otherwise, it's nice. One of my friends who went to another university, University of Delaware, transferred here this semester. So it's really nice to have a familiar face around on campus that I regularly hang out with, and I'm rooming with him next year. So that's a nice development for sure as well. Um, Other than that, yeah, it's been socially, I've been out and about more, which is a good feeling. School wise is marginally easier because I don't have a science course. I'm done with STEM officially for good. I like learning about it on my own time, but for a grade, I don't like having to sing for my money.
I entirely understand that. And yeah, there's certain things too. Like I love, being able to write as well, but like at the same time though, like I would much prefer to write on my own than to, you know, write for a graded class. I would like to be able to judge my own writing for myself.
Yeah, writing especially, I would not let anybody read anything I wrote ever if it was of any personal importance. My plan has always been to write like an extremely comprehensive memoir, and then the day that I die, just release it to everyone and have it just be like, all right, well, here's the full story. I would omit absolutely nothing, just for good and ill. Here's a list of my deeds. Make of it what you want. The main concern with that, though, is of course other people's privacy. I don't want to like go carpet bombing. Like someone's reading this, like, why'd you have to tell people that happened or something? And it's like I don't know, but it's important so they understand everything else that's going on. So I've been wondering, like, would I have to change like certain names? Would I have to, and then would it be obvious if people did research anyways? There's a whole ethical element to it, which is the other reason I'm inclined to do it after my passing, is because what are you going to do? Kick up dust at my gravestone? I mean, uh, but that would be interesting. I like reading memoirs a lot. I read a really interesting one yesterday in the form of a comic called Persepolis, about this woman who grew up during the Iranian-Iraqi War in the 80s, and that was fascinating for sure. I like reading autobiographies a lot.
Well, I definitely will, like I said, head back to that in a moment. And like I said, but definitely going back a little bit. So how did you choose, public relations as your major or your discipline for your studies?
It's a funny story. Senior year of high school, we're at some family gathering, and it comes up in conversation what my major will be, and I don't have one. My mom says you should do communications. You like to talk, and I was like, sure. And then I just ran with. I didn't even think about it like at all. I just thought like I hate doing STEM. Most English majors, it's a pyramid scheme. You get a degree to teach the next people to get an English degree to teach the next people to get an English. Philosophy, same. It's actually a pyramid scheme basically. And communications was this nice junction of I don't have to do math, I don't have to do science that much, maybe like basic statistics or something, but it sounds businessy. And then there was 4 tracks of that, which they made me declare my track on orientation, and I was like, that kind of took me off guard. I didn't expect to have to do it that early. And they were digital communications, which sounded like technically it'd be up my alley, but I was like, well, I kind of already know how to do that. I guess I wouldn't probably learn that much. There was health communications, and I was like, what does that mean? I make the Instagram stickers about like I just got vaccinated, for a job. Like that sounds kind of, that's all I can do. Come on, I can do more than that. There was political communications. I'm not touching that. I was like, I'm not in the mood to get in that discussion with my family or whatever. And then there was public relations, and I was like, my friend who does YouTube, his mom actually does PR, and I was like, I'm vaguely familiar with that. And it sounds like what is that like a mix of marketing and sociology? I'd probably be good at that, sure. So I basically just chucked a dart at the board, got PR, and as I got further in the major, I was like, yeah, I like this. Sure, I'll make a career out of it. I like it.
That really is such a fascinating story, and yeah, I mean that. What's funny though is that having spoke with so many people, it's so interesting how people find their majors and everything. I feel like everyone has such a very unique story when it comes to that, but that really is interesting that it was just something that was just mentioned once, and then when offered the choices, you found the one.
Yeah, it surprises people a lot. My family, or at least my mom's side, are all very kind of liberal artiste types, so they deplore any form of business. So I remember I got a few looks like public relations. Is that like the Shell oil spill guy? Have you guys sold your soul? I mean, they were mostly just kind of messing around, but they're very much like journalists, painters, that kind of thing. So it's the first step into the true white collar world, more or less, on that side. Uh, As far the other thing is, it surprises people is I would say I'm not typically regarded as a tremendously sociable person. I'm not like bad at interacting with people, but I'm a bit of a curmudgeonly hermit a lot of the time. I kind of have modes. So for example, I rarely go to parties or events at all if I can help it. I have gone before and I can function there, but it's not really my scene. I spend most of my free time, if possible, just watching movies or playing games, mostly single player games too. I don't really play online games very often. So people are always surprised, like public relations. I thought you were going to go into like work at a monastery and or like become like a scientist or something, or like people thought I was going to do computer science since one of my family members, my uncle, he was the former CEO of Oculus Rift actually. And with the computer science at University of Maryland is named after him. That's my uncle. So people were like, "Oh, are you going to go there?" And I was like, actually, no. I tried my hand at programming, and it's too tedious for me. I'd go nuts if I had to do that for a living. Uh, so that's kind of a funny story.
At the very least, have you at least visited the building?
Oh yeah, he when he visited me when I moved in as a freshman, he showed me around, and no one recognized him because when you see a name for a college building, you assume it's some guy who's been dead 50 years, and you have no idea who he is. But he took me up to his office, and which they gave him like an honorary one, even though he doesn't go here. And I have like a picture of me in there. I was bald at the time because I let my brother shave me that summer, so it's a pretty funny picture. But uh, yeah, no one knew who he was, which was really comical.
And so, like, if you ever like go past the building, are you ever like, huh? It's like that's our building.
It's cool. I was there at the groundbreaking in 2019 as like a ninth grader or something like that. And I always wanted to go to this university. I applied to like two or something. I applied to here in American University, which is I would go for free because my stepdad's a professor there. So that was like the only two options I really went for. So I always thought I was maybe going to have classes there. I actually never go down that way since I have no computer science classes at all. But it's funny because there are a ton of CS majors here. It's really big, and they all go to that building for class. So it's funny. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm off to. Well, I don't know how many of them actually know because I don't talk about it a ton because I don't want people being like, oh, did you get in through nepotism? So I did not get a letter of recommendation from him or anything because I did not need someone in my ear being like, you didn't earn it, you cheated, you're like the equivalent of a count or a duke here. That's unfair, whatever. But
Well, I'm glad that yeah, at the very least that you're able to go to the school that you wanted and yeah, I mean sort of make your own path. And so, how was overall the adjustment for you? Getting adjusted to college, was it far from where you lived?
I live about 20 minutes away, so no. I don't commute because I didn't want to rob myself of the dorm experience because that's a pretty essential socialization thing just to get used to the ropes of college life. That and I would hate the commute. That would drive me nuts. Just the Beltway is annoying, so I didn't feel like doing that. It wasn't a major adjustment, although I think the weirdest moment of the college adjustment, I would say the first time I went back home for Thanksgiving break, things just feel different. Like the house is decorated differently, your room is barren. Um, at my dad's house, my room was converted to my stepmom's office, which was totally consensual. I agreed like ahead of time, so that wasn't like them going behind my back or something. But it was just kind of weird. Like the atmosphere was different. The dynamic among people there has changed. Like maybe I noticed like my stepdad was calling the shots more around like what went on at the house, which had some changes in just general protocol and how things were expected to be run. So I'd say my worst mood each time of year is always November and early December. For whatever reason, I'm just always in a bad mood. Things are just kind of weird. This year was the same, although I got better like halfway through December or so. It takes a little getting used to like adjusting between where you go if you're spending time at a certain location. Generally, though, the transition was smooth. I would say I don't feel like homesick or lonely very often.
That's good at least. And you mentioned a little bit earlier that over the past couple years that that you've become a little bit more sociable. And so overall, like, what would you attribute that to? Like, is that more so like your effort of trying to become more sociable, oh, or I guess I don't know. What would that be for you?
Yeah, basically, in blunt terms, and somewhere in junior year, I realized I was kind of a loser, or like I was kind of low down on the totem pole. I wasn't disliked or anything, and I would say well known, but I don't think I came up very often. And if people did, it was probably as the brunt. My hair used to be kind of longer. I was like I wouldn't say fat, but I had like a kind of like that or something. I was the guy who like posted about Geometry Dash on Instagram, and my nickname was Milk Chugger back in middle school for one incident that's kind of not too relevant. But eventually, I just realized like I'm tired of this. So my senior year, coming back from COVID, I made an effort to be like more sociable, and I basically created this like sort of persona that was a bit almost kind of like a megalomaniac, just to like compensate, because I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just see this and how it goes. I had this gag where I sold T-shirts with my face on it for like $30, and I actually got like a ton of people to buy it. Like I have a picture of everyone wearing it in this school, like kind of massive room. It was just sort of a challenge, I guess, to myself to see like, could I actually like accomplish something like that? Uh, and it was a nice feeling, to not just feel like kind of a chump. I'd say though, like the biggest challenge for me is social battery. Like at college, for example, the way you make friends at the start is just being aggressively social. Like every time there's a chance to go out and do something with somebody, you say yes, you say yes, you say yes. I just can't do it. Like you hang out in the lounge after class. After classes, I just wanted to go back to my room and like, just kind of relax, not really talk to people. Some people relax by talking to people, which depending on how low energy someone is, like if they're not super demanding of your mental energy, then I don't mind it. But I just couldn't keep it up. So I kind of fell through the cracks a tiny bit and then managed to claw my way out second semester. It's still a work in progress, I guess. I don't know how to put it exactly.
Yeah, and I know a little bit of what you're speaking about too, because for myself, like I am very much a very introverted person, but I can do like I really enjoy meeting people and having one-on-one conversations like we're doing now. But at the same time though, yeah, they can only go but so long before it's like, all right, well this has been really fun. So what's next?
There was one conversation I had with someone at the dining hall, right? I remember I just said like, well, I've kind of run out of things to say. We've been here for about 2 hours, and there's nothing on my mind. It's blank. I guess I'll just leave. Bye. And then I was like, dude, what am I doing? Or like the most humiliating experience of my college life in terms of my ability to socialize was we have like a coffee club or whatever where they like make coffee, they give it to you, and they like talk about the roast of the week, and it's kind of a social club thing as well. I went to that because I was like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I learn how to make coffee better or something. I talk briefly to the club founder, and then I get my espresso and I just drink it. Everyone's already in groups because they arrived earlier than me, and I don't have the courage to like just button be like, hey guys, hey. So I sit there in a chair, not even going on my phone, just staring out the window of the engineering building, which is where they were hosting it. And after about 10 to 15 minutes of silence, not even checking my phone, just kind of staring like vacantly out the window, I was like, dude, I can't do this anymore. I just put my cup down, just walked out of the building, having not spoken a word to anyone other than the guy at the start. And I was walking back, like, what's wrong with me? I can't just like talk to people. Oh, ugh. And after that, I was like, dude, I can't live like this anymore.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where it's just like, okay, like I'm gonna try something out, whatever, and then you're like, I don't know what's going on here. It's like I'm gonna try to get involved. It's like, oh no, not working. Okay, bye
Yeah.
bye.
Yeah, and that was a trend where I actually did throw big parties myself back in high school, but only for my specific like friend group, which was considerably large. But for my birthday and stuff like that, I'd have a ton of people for like sleepovers or whatever. But I never went to anyone else's. I would only attend parties if I knew every single person there and was basically like hosting the thing myself. The most recent time I went to a party was like a Christmas one last semester that a friend of mine was hosting at his house, and I don't really like dancing that much. I just kind of talked to people the whole time and then left when I ran out of things to talk about. And that's kind of just how it always goes.
That makes perfect sense though. And would you say that having the YouTube channel helped you a little bit with the socialization part?
It gave me a common talking point, and people are usually somewhat interested in it, so that has been a help on that front. I remember that when I first made the channel, part of my thought process was like, "Wow, I bet if I become an internet celebrity, girls will finally think I'm cool." They don't care at all. I don't think. I remember I was really bummed after like we got to like the first thousand. So like, all right, dude, it's time to shine. And like they don't play video games. They don't. I mean, they'll like think it's like mildly of note or something, but it doesn't get you that far in that degree. So mostly what I've done is I have a poster that I tape to my dorm room that just has like a little thing like subscribe to Cytonox or something. People know me as the YouTube guy now, which is a step up from the Milk and Geometry Dash guy. So that's the main effect probably.
Have you ever had anyone, that's like recognize you like that, or have even been like, I've heard about you.
Actually, yes, and they've been hilarious experiences. One of them was my friend's Japanese professor at Virginia Tech. He knew us from a video we did on the game Cuphead. He was like, "Wait, are you?" He's like, "Yeah, that's that's me." And someone here, I think twice. I don't remember the specific cases, but someone. It'll be like I start talking to someone, and my YouTube channel comes up. So it's not like they recognize me explicitly from that, but I mentioned that I have it. She was like, "Wait, did you do a video on Cuphead?" Because that was our one that got like 800,000 views, and it got pretty popular. And I'll be like, yeah, that was me. And they're like, dude, I saw that like 2 years ago. What? So that's funny. It hasn't happened too often, but whenever it does, I'm like, whoa, okay, it's, technically a celebrity moment there.
That is pretty extraordinary there, and yeah, and I'm really glad that you're able to, let's say, have such a fun experience, with both your learning with your with pursuing your degree, and then also with your YouTube channel. And so, and I know we mentioned a little bit earlier that you are getting, a little bit more involved into, your PRSSA organization, where you are. And so ultimately, like, I guess what led you to decide, that you were going to, one, join PRSSA, and then also, like, yeah, I guess work up the ladder a little bit, as you're mentioning earlier.
Yeah, basically, it was kind of the similar principle to why I started the YouTube channel. Actually, it's that question, just why not me? Other people do it. I have the means, I have the will. I could, and I guess I should, because it's a good feeling. Like I'll say, I was very like that's what I was saying as a productive week. Is when I had my first meeting as secretary. I lined up another thing with actually the American Marketing Association. It's like a 8-week contract thing. So I have my hands in a couple different cookie jars, so to speak. But basically, it's kind of fun, I guess, just working your way up the ladder. I remember back as a kid, for example, my mom, who works at the Library of Congress, would frequently deny promotion opportunities just because on the basis of she wanted more free time and for work-life balance. Like, I make enough money, I don't need it, and it drove me nuts because I was like, "What, mom? You gotta take that. It'd be so cool if you were the top guy." And then so my dad actually did kind of move up, and I always thought it was really fun to like track his like, all right, first this, now acting CFO. What's next, father? So it's fun that I get to finally do that myself a little bit. The kind of funnily phrased goal in my head was like, my goal is to become like a big cheese who calls all the shots. I want to be on the full scale, like full power, that kind of thing. That makes me sound kind of power hungry and nefarious, which I'm not. But uh, for example, my end game is president of local chapter, and then after that, I might see if I can apply to the national e-board and stuff. Just I want to be in there. It's a good goal, and then from there, hopefully, I have a pretty seamless transition to an actual career after college graduation, I guess.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I mean, from our brief interaction earlier, and especially now, like, I definitely, wish you all the best, and I do hope that you apply for national committee.
Yeah, that's down the line, of course. But I have more or less secured the president thing. The current president said, like, yeah, sure, we're graduating this semester. There's not too many other people who are gunning for it, so you're up. I do want to bolster our PRSSA chapter here. It's not super sizable. It's kind of hard to get in contact with. Like I had a lot of trouble actually getting involved because no one really like reached out to me or anything. I kind of had to claw my way in and like contact a bunch of people. Uh, so my goal is I'm going to start trying to contact communications professors, stuff like that, about like seeing if I can go into their class, talk about it a bit, and then maybe they offer like a tiny amount of extra credit for like checking us out, maybe joining, which would be nice. Just gathering more members. Currently we have like between 10 and 15 people, maybe at least it showed up to the last meeting. It's a little ho hum. So I want to kind of breathe some life into it, just electrocute the Frankenstein, bring him back to sleep, and basically just a little bit of house cleaning, turn it into a bona fide colossus, get all the PR people in here and make it a bona fide chapter like some of the others I've seen that are, pretty healthy.
I really love that, even only being, I believe, a week into, not even, of being a secretary, like you already have like a full on plan for your, hopefully next year presidency. And so, I mean, I can't wait to see what you're going to do long term, both for PRSSA, but also for, for yourself and your community.
Yeah, I mean, a valuable thing, of course. One thing that I like also is I'm the youngest member here. I'm a sophomore, and everyone's a junior, senior, otherwise. So it's reassuring for one. It's like, okay, well, I can't be too messed up pathwise because I have an extra year before any of this starts. I'm like ahead of the curve, I guess is kind of what I was saying earlier. So that's reassuring. Uh, I do think it's a good thing just to be able to teach, make sure everyone's just as successful as possible. We all win if that happens. It's a nice feeling like, it's actually making a difference and helping people move along with the career and just general. I think the common term is best practices is what they've been using during like growth month and stuff like that. And that's just good stuff to know for people to be able to do. It's nice.
Yeah, it really is. And and going forward, since you mentioned a little bit about the future, do you have any future ambitions for what you'd want to do following college?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I guess I would just naturally seg into the PRSA, like the major leagues from the little league, basically. And then from there, as far as PR goes, people usually seem to want to go with an agency rather than in-house. What people do, I'm kind of ambivalent, honestly. I could see myself going either way. Just I'd prefer somewhere that's more noteworthy instead of like working for some kind of small town shmup whatever. Like kind of okay, guys, we do local level business. That feel kind of unsatisfying because I mean, even if I was the CEO of one of those places, I don't really know what I would do. I mean, what do you make like the same as a normal office guy or something? I don't know. I always wondered that about like you ever been to Home Depot or something and see like brands like Jimmy's like sidewalk salt? You're like, how much does the CEO of Jimmy's sidewalk salt make? Like this is it even profitable? Like, I don't know who Jimmy's sidewalk salt is. I've never seen this brand in my life. It's kind of the random like smaller companies. I don't really feel like that'd be too satisfying, but I guess my general vague ambition is just work somewhere big that's cool.
Well, I mean, I really like though that you very much, at least from our conversation, you very much know what you do want to do, and then also what you're not really interested in. Not to say that you might not, try it out here and there, but but I like though that you're willing to to experiment, be creative, and make the most of whatever opportunities that seem available to you.
Yeah, I've heard it's important to be specialized at a little bit of everything and not be like hyper specific. Like you only do social media, you only do graphic design, you only do like mass comms or like press releases or whatever, like writing. It's good to be able to do basically be a jack of all trades is like what's valuable, and like now that AI is coming, I keep posted on that just to know, like the ways that you're supposed to make a prompt with generative AI is like you basically give it like a scenario, like you are a XYZ, and you give it like extremely detailed, like massive paragraphs. I wouldn't say it's easier necessarily than writing, even though you're not officially writing the thing, but it's like you have to know the right stuff to say. And I attended the PRSA panel on AI, like I think on Monday is when it was last week. I guess this week technically. And there was one guy there who was really hostile towards AI, which I mean, I can get, but it was funny that there was like a whole argument going on in the chat during the meeting, which was otherwise very kind of formal, I guess. I'm just, my stance on AI, it's not going away. I mean, might as well just be ahead of the curve. If it does go away, cool. I'm not crying about that either. But if it doesn't, which it probably won't, it's good to know how to live with it. Technology does not bend that way. Like whenever there's a new technology introduced, the television, non-silent movies, stuff like that, people always freak out, lose their minds. Society's going to the dogs, moral degradation galore. In 10 years, it's normal. And like, they lost. There's nothing you can really do about it. For better or worse, I'm sure someday the technological singularity will hit a point where we actually are better off not going forward. And this might be it. But I don't know. We can't do anything about it, even if that's the case realistically. So
Yeah, that definitely is that very highly intrigues me, and it's just such a good question that you posed. And yeah, and even for me, like I really enjoy like technology and everything, but to a certain extent too, it's also like, well, okay, well, how can we create a balance with everything? It's like not everything is scary, but then at the same time, not everything really requires us to be plugged in 24/7. Like sometimes it's nice to just be by ourselves.
yeah, and there's an interesting aspect that has occurred to me also about this is also AI, I guess, but it's interesting that theoretically the end game of our endless innovation is that almost we could achieve a world where we don't even have to work or every single possible task is fully automated. I don't think that's consciously what a lot of people would say, but like people panic about job layoffs, but eventually that would be really interesting. I don't even know how that would work. Like you don't have to pay for food because robots make it for free or something. I can't even visualize that. It's so radically different because it basically circumvents any economic system at all, like that we've ever invented. It's kind of a brand new thing. I don't think we'll get there in for a while because that's so different. But that would be interesting to imagine. Would we be happier in a world like that? Or we invented AI to do business stuff originally, but now it's out there making art, writing song lyrics. And it's kind of funny that we're still working and toiling while it's basically just handling the arts sector and kind of the opposite of what we intended. Uh, Funny how things go.
It really is because I mean, even for me, like I'm very interested in like like the history of even the personal computer. I mean, but that was originally a business tool, and here we are now. Like we have smartphones with us 24/7 that you know that can control a lot of the parts of our life that are most important. And even if you wanted to have a life without one, like sometimes you go to a restaurant and there's not a menu, it's just a QR code. Or I think even to even log into my stuff, I'm an online college student, well, graduate student. I need not just the phone to log me in, but I also need the internet and the computer where you're always connected forever.
Yeah, those QR code menus, they drive me nuts. The only time I've ever walked out of a restaurant was one of my favorite places as a kid was Nando's Peri Peri, the spicy chicken place. I used to go there all the time. And they went to the dogs. I'm serious. Like my brother and I went there once. They gave us the plastic silverware, the QR code menu. And I was looking like, dude, I can't cut a chicken with a plastic fork. This is going to be horrible. And we just walk out after they give us the menu. And I felt that was the most vindicated I've ever felt in my life. I was like, yeah, how do you feel about that? You got man, technology. Yeah, there's pros and cons for a lot of stuff for sure. Generally good, but that one irks me. Just
I definitely have my things as well. That's just like it's just like I don't know about that. I mean, it's like I'm all for technology and advancement, but to a certain extent, it's just like couldn't we have just left that one thing?
yeah, just the endless like efficiency increases. It's at a certain point they almost start to almost counteract themselves, and things like end up kind of losing the forest for its trees almost. Where maybe it'll be less intensive in terms of physical labor or something, but the ultimate time could be comparable for a process just because there's new stuff introduced with the technology. Like you have to verify a process, you have to oversee it in some ways, stuff like that. As far as like the most like hands on the ground job I've ever worked is I worked at a movie theater during the Barbenheimer premiere, which that was my Vietnam. I was fighting for my life behind those counters right there. But that one I think is one of those jobs that's here to stay more or less because I mean until we get robots that can pick up popcorn in under 10 minutes before the next group of people goes in the theater. This is not really a very interesting insight. That's kind of common knowledge, but it's popped into my head.
Did you enjoy working in movie theater?
Yes, I love movies, and I got to see them for free. It was indoors, air conditioned. People didn't get angry at me really. I did not have like that many like nightmare customer experiences. We had one manager who was like really bumbling and incompetent, but he was just as like annoying to the other managers. So there was a bit of solidarity there, and I heard he mellowed out after I left for the summer. Uh, the main thing is I like the eccentric cast of characters. That's honestly what makes any job for me is my coworkers. Like that's always one of the easiest settings for me to make friends actually is when you're basically just forced into the same scenario with someone over and over. Like if I was sent to war for whatever reason, I'm sure I'd be buddies with my platoon. Like at a job, it's like and most of my friends I made were sat at the same table as me in like high middle school. That's the hardest part of college making friends really is you don't have assigned tables. You have like these distant chairs and you don't just go after just someone after a lecture like, hey, you sat in the chair next to me. Do you want to have a play date? That doesn't happen. So it's less organic. You have to make friends with like people in your dorm or like you see someone is wearing a shirt. Like I have a Falling in Reverse shirt. It's a band, and I saw someone else with them once. I was like, seize the opportunity, stuff like that. It's a different game nowadays. But
Yeah, I 100% understand and relate to that. And so, like, even for myself, I did all of my undergrad and now my graduate studies, all online. And for my undergrad, mostly asynchronous. And so it's been really interesting meeting people and, sort of getting to know people because it's like you said, there's not any like assigned seats. And it's like, and how do you interact with people? And so something I found really fun personally is like with even doing this podcast, it provides such a nice time to speak with people and and being able to chat. And so it's always really fun whenever I'm able to to speak with people. And like I said, meet people, especially like like our conversation right now. Like I've so been enjoying speaking with you.
Yeah, it's nice just chatting. I mean, that's one of my hobbies. If you ask me a list of things I enjoy, just like talking with someone is great. One thing that I found like an interesting idea is sometimes I just want to like ask people I know, like, all right, what if I asked you to give me the entire story of your life? Just like I'll sit down, I won't say a word, just what's the tale, no judgment, just like sit here like, all right, go on. Like I'd find that pretty interesting, to be honest, just hearing someone's full tale, or at least their take of how they ended up where they are, what made them, what were like developmentally important moments, things like that. I think a lot about why I am the way I am because I wouldn't say I've changed that much at my core. I think my theory is that like at everyone's core is like your kid self basically, which is unrefined, doesn't know how to interact with people, and just kind of does as it pleases. You kind of shave away at the rough edges, and what's left is like your current self, like it's learned, at least in most cases, like evolved in some path. I used to be a bit of a brute as a child. I was very much a fan of guy stuff, and I did not like girl stuff. I'd go up to people and ask them ballet or Batman, and if you said ballet, I would punch you in the face. And I broke this. I don't know if I broke, but I punched this girl in the nose and got expelled once. People thought I was going to grow up to be a thug. I was a goon, really. I was a ne'er do well, and for whatever reason, I just like stopped being that way when I hit middle school or something. But uh, that kid is I don't walk around punching people anymore. But I think I do have some tendencies. I had to say, like I'm kind of cynical about things sometimes, just like in disposition maybe or opinions. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, and I love the concept, like you said, of going up to someone and being like, you know, like tell me your life story, and that's something like to me is something I really enjoy too, which is why I'm so glad to be yeah, I mean a communication student right now. For my master's doing lifespan and digital communication because it truly, especially for the master's program, it has both the relational communication that I enjoy, but then also the digital side of things that I think, I mean, is just such an interesting but fitting, combination of things. And I kind of actually want to flip this for the short version of it. So, aside from the stuff you've already mentioned, what would you say has been your life story?
My life story. I would say, um, I mean, I have a peculiar circumstance. The way I describe it in my head, sort of, is you ever been to a frozen yogurt place and there's like, you have chocolate, vanilla, and there's like the middle lever that puts them both. It's kind of like my family's on the different sides are very different. My dad's side is like they live on like a farm, very kind of good old boy Republican type, working man, loggers, that sort of thing. And my mom's side, as I mentioned, is all the like, artistes and, very liberal sorts, whatever. My mom and my dad were both kind of somewhat different, like distilled, more like kind of measured versions of that, I guess. So the fact that they met is kind of funny, and I was produced as like I grew up with kind of a mix of both. So in terms of like maybe the way I feel creatively, like what music I listen to, what my interest in movies. That's kind of like my mom's side. I definitely have more of my mom in me just because I grew up around her more. My dad's house I didn't go to as often. Although I'm on great terms with them both. They're on good terms with each other. They had a weird divorce. They basically just like downgraded to platonic best friends or something. So it was not as horrible as it was for a lot of people. Uh, Interestingly, I never felt like them splitting impacted my development super obviously. Like I don't think I was too perturbed by it as a kid, other than thinking my dad's house was really boring. Like I'd go to there and there'd be like two pieces of furniture and like a Nintendo Wii with like one game that I didn't even care about or something. Uh, he just had the usual bachelor pad until he got remarried and got an actual house some years ago. Uh, but I guess the main junction there is what if I grew up with both my parents in the same house, I might be a bit more typical. I don't know how the best way to put it is. Uh, I guess, hmm, it's hard to sum up the whole essence of things. My big turning points developmentally, though, were definitely like somewhere as a kid. I just like, I don't know, instead of like, I never had cable TV as a kid. I was just, sitting there reading Calvin and Hobbes or whatever instead, or like, just mostly the Sunday funnies. I was a big comic guy, big into video games. And then I guess the second choke point is like this is more of a personal development thing than like a career or interest thing. But in 10th grade, the year my dark night of the soul, uh, it incited a lot of changes. Mostly of just like, dude, I can't live like this anymore. I've got to change some things around here. And then I've just kind of continued to. My goal is to become, I guess, in abstract, a good person, someone who makes the lives of others better, and definitely not the inverse, at least. And that takes a lot of more self awareness than one thinks, because everyone has things they do that annoy people, or even worse, like negatively impact them. That you can't see. You need someone else to kind of be the mirror. So I very much appreciate it whenever someone is very honest with me and tells me something like, "Hey, you do this. I'm not like indicting you, but it makes people feel a certain way. They don't like it, and like it's not going to do you favors." You need to have that outside perspective, because you're never gonna. It's like being a fish in water. You don't notice it. Like I'm habitually, someone described me as like a judgmental, hateful individual. Not in like like I'll be sitting at the dining hall, like that guy's a man ponytail. I hate how those look. They're stupid, or something like that. And people have said to me that like I'll make some comment like, it makes me wonder what you say about me when I'm not around based on these factors. And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty reasonable response. I would think about that too if there was someone who was always complaining about like trivial nonsense people did, uh, things like that. And it makes you more aware, and it's a good step to being like just someone who is a positive influencer on the lives of others, I guess.
Yeah, that really is intriguing. I mean, to think about, and but yeah, but first of all, thank you so much for for sharing the condensed version of your life story.
Yeah, that's the abstract, the whole memoir, which I've decided that thing will be as like it'll be ludicrously unreadable and only there if someone is like absurdly interested in. It'll have like every event ever from my greater memory just put into a series of roughly chronological vignettes. It's not meant to be a bestseller. It's there if like my eventual descendants are like, I wonder what Grandpa was like or something like, huh, okay, that's what he was up to at my age. I decided about that because my great grandma had a memoir, and it was really funny seeing pictures of your grandparents when they were young is weird because you don't ever think about this old person, this shriveled raisin was once someone like you. Out, they had goals to accomplish, dreams to fulfill, chase, and it was a pretty sassy memoir. She had a lot of comments making like my great grandpa's best friend and stuff like that. Like that philandering lout, Rod MacArthur was, it just cracked me up. And I was like, she just dropped this after she passed, and I was like, that's very like you. I knew her very well. My great grandparents lived to be pretty old, so I knew her. It's like, yeah, this is in character. That was pretty funny. So I thought it was interesting just to know the story of like where she came from. Like she grew up in Nazi occupied Paris, which was quite a saga. And there's just stories you would never hear, really, especially if you were like, most people I know never got to know their great grandparents that well before they passed. So it's funny seeing stories like one time these two Nazis were walking by and one of them like hit on her, but then she like tripped him down the subway stairs, and the other one could have arrested her, but he thought it was hilarious, so he just let her go and didn't do anything. And I remember she told me, I read that, I was like, that's hilarious. Like, what a weird story.
That is so interesting. I mean, overall, to think about that, but I mean, but you have like firsthand history right there, which I mean, I think is just so fascinating because I mean, overall, that one of the most interesting things is understanding one's thought process and their understanding of things. So the fact that you kind of have that there, I don't know, like now I'm like in the midst of thought about that.
Yeah, I read somewhere there's a quote like, tell me what you fear and I can tell you who you are, something like that. And if you know like what makes you angry, what makes you scared, think questions like that, you can get a pretty good idea of what makes yourself tick in like a kind of abstract, like almost mechanical point of view. Like it's like viewing yourself as like a sim or like a character. Like I remember I was thinking like what makes me angry, for example, besides trivial things like slow walkers and being honked at red lights and things like that, which drive me insane. Everyone else probably. Uh, people thinking I'm stupid drives me insane. Like I had one Com 107 class where there was an argument about something I would say is rather non-controversial, at least hard to get fired up about. It was, is beauty objective? And I thought that relativism is the most boring ho hum position you can take. Everyone thinks that beauty's the eye of the beholder. Ooh. And I was thinking that there has to be something, at least. I don't have an answer, but I think there's something to the fact that we universally have agreed certain cases of architecture, or like the Mona Lisa, the Notre Dame. Funny that they're both French. Stuff like that they're beautiful. Whereas like dead maggot is ugly or something. I mean, there's some common denominator between these things. Presumably, we might not be conscious of it, but I think to say beauty is purely relative, and if one guy thinks it's beautiful to see a road-killed animal, then I guess it is beautiful. That's not a satisfying answer to me. And I said that to class, and people started jumping like, "Dude, you didn't consider that there are other perspectives and that it can be in the like." This is like, it's like I thought of that when I was like 12 or something. Like that's like theory of mind. Kids get that when they realize that their parents don't know what happened to them at school that day because they aren't them. They have a separate consciousness. It's kind of a base level idea, like, and the fact that they thought I was stupid and just never contemplated this possibility at all, that there are other opinions other than my own. I was like, oh my god, I was going insane. Just stuff like that, and it's kind of telling about how I operate, I guess.
That is really fascinating, and I've really been enjoying this conversation too. I mean, like I said, I like as like I always say. I mean, I really enjoy meeting people, but I mean, I think this conversation in particular, I mean, has just intrigued me so much, and yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like we could be chatting for a while here. What we have.
Yeah, I think. Oh, there was something very interesting that just occurred to me, and it escaped. It's like that drives me nuts. Yeah, I mean, this conversation. What were we talking about again? We're talking about Com 107 and things that are annoying, introspection. Yeah, that's where we were. I guess one other thing that is interesting that I found as a value of mine is I have I value the past. I guess like I have a certain nostalgia for childhood, and I guess the age where I was not fully formed enough to be. I was almost precluded from moral judgment, I guess, because I was so young, and it's kind of a nostalgic time because you really don't have to worry about what you were doing as a kid. You don't get how the world works, but now you're playing for real stakes. Like things you do matter, and like ethics. This goes back a bit to PR. Is my professor taught us that the PR department is ideally the moral backbone of a company, basically, like proactively telling the truth, making sure they don't do shady, dubious things. And that's a hard perception to make. People usually see PR as like some sort of you're like a lawyer for companies. You're like, well, I can spin doctor this into some whatever. And ideally that's not how it is, but that's how the public perception of PR, which hilariously enough are the PR of PR is sketchy. So I remember just one symbol of that is I have this stuffed bunny that I've had since the moment I was born. I was given this by my mom, I think. It's just like right when I was brought into the world, and I still have it. And I've had to repair it numerous times. Like the ears got bitten off by my dog, so I had to like sew it back in seventh grade home ec and all that stuff. And it's kind of like I like the idea that I will have this thing for my entire life, like until the day I die. I will have had one consistent, belonging companion. He's been the overseer of all my deeds. It's kind of a funny idea.
Yeah, I mean that really is, and I mean, but overall, I mean, between that and some of your interests, and of course your longtime friend too, definitely sounds like you. I mean, you've had overall pretty like a pretty consistent life thus far.
Yeah, I'd say so. As far as like my personality goes, it's been kind of, I'd say the base of it has been similar since like 10th grade. Some people changed a lot when they went to college, whatever. I'm notoriously belligerent for not drinking or smoking. Really, neither appeals to me at all. And people commonly mistake me for someone who does at least one of those things because of like the way I dress or something. But I don't like the idea of not being in my right mind, I guess is how I'd put it. And the other one is, of course, alcohol tastes bad, and I'm a baby and I have to drink soda. But so that was one thing that used to frustrate people back in high school, though, is they'd always be like, dude, I want to, want to like have a sesh or whatever. And I never did any of that at all. And I was pretty stone cold. The one, like the biggest test of my judgment, it sounds almost like some sort of moral fable, was the girl I liked for years was like, I'll kiss you if you like take hit off my vape or something. And I actually declined. I was like, no, that's like, debasing and pathetic if I accepted that or something like that. And I was like, I feel good. I feel good about that. That could have been, kind of a shameful moment, but
That really is intriguing, though. I mean, overall, I mean, like I've said before, I mean, this has been such a intriguing, you know, conversation, and I mean, it's so great I mean, to learn more about like what you do, not just your work with your YouTube, PRSSA, every in your academics, but also who you are a bit as a person as well. And I mean, I think that's just so intriguing. And like I said before, thank you so much for, for sharing that with, me and everyone that's viewing.
Oh, no problem. I'm an open book of a soul. I like to think. I like to no skeletons in this closet. Just sweatshirts mostly. Yeah, I guess a good way to think about it is recently this stuff is kind of all foot. It's been kind of heavy. I've been talking about morality a lot, and whatever for whatever reason. It's because my friend's mom passed away recently, and I went to the memorial for that like last weekend or so. And I remember being astounded by how many people there were, and I was like, she touched a lot of lives basically. And it was kind of interesting seeing like I think that's a good way to go. Like if you can reach the end basically, and like people cared about you, they liked you, lots of people I'd be satisfied with that. And that's a hard thing to come to grips with, death. I mean, people don't think about it much because you feel invincible at this age, but every so often you read a story like this guy, 22, hit by car. And it's kind of intimidating. Like, could I face it if it happened right now? I remember one dream I had that terrified me when I was like 17, where some guy just like kicked down my door, sprinted at me, and just like, for whatever reason, just did me in. And I was terrified. I always thought I'd be able to stoically face death like a cool guy, like, any last words? And I'd be like, just two. Ha ha ha. Something, and then that'd be it. I thought that's how it'd go, but it's not at all. It's terrifying to face that sort of thing. So I want to live a life in such a way that I would feel content and like proud of myself when the time finally comes, which, heady stuff to be thinking of at age 20 and probably unlikely, but it's all because when I was a kid, I saw this Veggie Tales movie. If you know Veggie Tales, that Christian vegetable cartoon. They have this song, the movie The Pirates Who Don't Do Anything, and they had this one song like when the captain of the main ship comes around and he comes, it was like something, he checks your treasure, which the obvious equivalency is like God checks your good deeds, and I do think about that a lot because I mean the idea of like if you screw up in the afterlife, you just get tossed to boil in a cauldron of lava and get poked by pitchforks for eternity. That's a long time eternity. That's kind of scary. I think about that stuff a lot. It's kind of terrifying and heavy. But
I mean, something like I said, that I've really enjoyed about this is, being able to, to go beyond just the traditional, the story a little bit. And like I said, learning about not just yourself and your thought process, and of course, condolences to, to your friend and their family and yourself.
yeah, it was interesting. I actually hadn't been in contact with that friend for a while for a number of reasons that are probably beyond the scope of what he would want shared. But it was kind of a moment that brought us together again after college started, basically, and it was nice to reconnect with him, just see what he's up to. I talk to him still now regularly. So, and it's interesting the way that people passing can bring people together as well. Like it brings everyone into one place. Maybe they haven't seen each other in a while. The same happened with my mom. A friend of hers passed away, and she met all of her friends from high school again, stuff like that. So it's kind of an interesting side effect, I guess, of that, is it does make communities tighter in a way. Uh, other than that, I would say obviously the other question of like how I'm doing. I'm doing fine, but I've seen it's been eventful. Fortunately, not really. I'm not the one being maligned by life, but lots of stuff going along around in general. Other than that, though, what's interesting is I have a younger brother, and he's deciding where to go to college, and that's sort of interesting to follow. As like the older brother, basically, just what he's going to do. He's not sure yet. He doesn't really know, except he's going to got to decide. He's a senior, so at some point he's got to make the shot on that. He might go to where I go, which would be awesome, but I think he wants to go to California. This is kind of off topic. I'm just rambling at this point, but.
Well, nevertheless, I hope that that he is able to make a decision that he enjoys and is able to fulfill his journey as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the best advice I could give him or any young people, I guess, is basically kind of, at least what worked for me was just kind of pick a horse and stick with it. Like, honestly, I don't think that many jobs are like totally miserable. Maybe they are for some people, but I remember feeling like I could see myself in a lot of different career pathways, and that ultimately the end destination would probably be not too dissimilar. I'd end up in some job doing whatever, be it science, math, literature, I don't know. It probably wouldn't impact too much. Like I just remember I had this idea that whatever your major was didn't matter towards getting your job at all, which is probably not true. But I just thought about this because my dad's major was like engineering or something, and now he's like does like grants and contracts at a company. I was like, what's the link here? Like Martin Scorsese, the film director, he was an engineering major, and I was like, okay, well, it sounds like you just get the piece of paper and just get hired for whatever because they know you went through college or something. Is how I thought of it. I wouldn't say that's exactly accurate now that I know more, but it doesn't pay too much to fret over your path, especially in the early days. Just like don't be indecisive because what I see getting people far more often than like maybe feeling like they picked the wrong thing, you can switch the thing. It's people who don't know what they want to do. The kind of existential ennui and fear of like, what do I do? Time is running out. I need to make a call starts to set in. And if you want to avoid that, I think there's something to be said for just picking a course of action, following through, and eventually you'll just kind of adapt to it, whatever that is.
And I really like, the phrase that you use of "don't be indecisive," and yeah, I mean, and I think that's just such a great one because I feel like too that oftentimes when we're given a choice, especially for me, I'm very much an overthinker, and so like I might spend minutes, hours thinking, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And as much as I hate to say it, sometimes you almost at least have to be geared to make a decision because sometimes if you don't make the decision will be made for you.
Exactly. That's decisiveness is a big thing of just what separates, your ability to I guess accomplish things almost because very easily people can just talk themselves out of doing anything. I do that all the time for more trivial matters. Like I've talked myself out of so many social events or, made up a lot of excuses to not go like, oh, I'm washing my hair, whatever. And sometimes I'm glad I stayed in, but sometimes I also regret not having gone to whatever event, even if it wasn't in my wheelhouse exactly. Like I'll see like, my friends will have some memory, be it good or bad. It's a memory, which is probably better than none. Like, for example, I never went to prom or homecoming until senior year of high school because I was like, oh, that's for, sociable people. I'm going to sit inside and play Team Fortress 2 until I fall asleep at my chair. And senior year, I was like, you know what? This is the year that I'm making an effort to kind of get out there. I went. I didn't love homecoming. Prom, I liked the post celebration. Uh, I actually did have a date for prom, although it was just like my friend. I wasn't, like we weren't seeing each other or anything, but I got the basic experience basically. And I was glad I went, even if it wasn't like, for most of the time I was just sitting there sipping lemonade, not even hanging out with my date on a chair, just like watching everyone dance like, man, these guys, the things that amuse the average person just don't do it for a connoisseur like me. I was drinking that till my teeth went fuzzy and I was like, dude, I'm such a bum. Uh, but I'm glad I did it though.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you did it as well. And yeah, sometimes just making those memories because it's one of the things too where you always of course have the future to look forward to, but at the same time though, you can only have one past.
Exactly. And, you think about the past a lot, especially the older you get, I'm sure, because there's less you can do in the present once you're like 60 or something. But I think a lot about, as we talked about earlier, just, what brought me to where I am now. And there's always that question people ask, like, do you have any regrets, stuff like that? And the common answer you'll get is either a ton or no, because it brought me to where I am now. And I think they're both, valid enough answers. There's a reason they're common. They're both probably right for whoever says them. But I would say the regrets that I do have are not often related to like major life trajectory stuff. And I'd probably be at the exact same place if I did it differently. But it's usually something where like I made a decision in complete confidence that would never impact anybody knowingly other than myself. But I was just kind of like, that wasn't like a, cool thing to do or something. Like maybe I was like having beef with someone for no reason or something and just dragging it out needlessly that like it's resolved now, but I was like, why did I do that? This guy didn't do anything to me. I was just like doing that for some reason. I've analyzed. There was one guy who I was arguing with in senior year, and I actually the reason I took that girl in question as my date to prom was because he liked her and I was being vindictive and cruel. I don't know why I did that. He goes to this college. I'm on good terms with now. We talked over. I've been friends with him since third grade, but for some reason he started really annoying me, and I just became like absolute. That was like kind of evil, and I was like, I don't know why I did that. So that's like one example of something that I regret, but I don't think it would have changed where I am now necessarily if I did it differently.
That is so fascinating. And even though that, of course we are beginning to wrap up this conversation. I mean, I think it's just such a, I mean, a valid, a valid point to make, and yeah, it's one of the things that even when evaluating, who you are and what you do, sometimes it's not even what we do, but rather the interactions that we have with others, and what did we do with the time that we have.
Yeah, they say that I forget who said this, but if you want to see how someone acts and how they approach things, don't look at how they make major decisions, but look at how they make small ones, like everyday life things. Like, is someone's life regimented or kind of they call it as they see it? Basically, are they clean or messy? Are they considerate of others in their average decision making, or are they kind of Machiavellian types? Stuff like that. That's how you see how someone's base instinct drives them to act. The big things, they think about it too much, they polish their initial reaction, and that's not a great measure of like knowing who they are as a person or how they'll act. So that's like a good way of kind of IDing people, basically, like what kind of personality type they are. It's not necessarily that one is always better than the other, whatever. But just like for the sake of communication, knowing what kind of person someone is and what will work, what will get through to them, what will irritate them, is valuable. Like, for example, apologies are a common example of people like apologies in a number of different ways. And I remember having a lot of difficulty with that back in high school, like figuring out what would make someone satisfied, would make someone angry. Like some people, if you just said an apology with no explanation, would appreciate it because they'd see an apology explanation as like trying to justify in retrospect what you did in the middle of your apology, which they would see as disrespectful. And some see a simple "I'm sorry" as like flippant or not heartfelt and not self-analytical enough of why you did that. So you have to read what kind of person wants you to explain versus not explain what you did. And things like that are all nuances that you can glean from just kind of pinging people as a certain character.
Yeah, that really is such a great point. And yeah, like I said though, but I've just been so enjoying this conversation, and I mean, and I really like the true depth that we were able to go in here, and so yeah, I'm very excited, like I said, to continue following your personal journey, and speaking of that though, so for anyone who's still tuning in, so where would be the best places for for them to go ahead and follow you online or your YouTube channel?
Oh, of course. Well, my YouTube channel, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is Cytonox. That's Cytonox is what it is. Type it in, will come up unless you make a typo, and then you'll get I don't know, some random gibberish probably. We're not that famous yet. As for socials, Instagram is my most active one, which is just my name, like Alex underscore Spencer and a bunch of underscores. I recently made it private, but I accept everybody. It's just because I read somewhere like a career advice thing that you want to make your personal accounts private. Mine is like a bit avant-garde. All my pictures are like these weird like Pixar collages or something. So I'd probably look like a weirdo if like career people looking through it's like what's this purple gargoyle on a whatever. I'm like, oh, it's just art project. So don't worry if I accept everybody. I'm not a discerning follow vetter really.
That makes sense. And yeah, and I definitely hope everyone go ahead and subscribes to the YouTube channel. And I will say that uh one of the videos, because I have actually went back and viewed a couple of your videos, I will say that probably the favorite one that I have viewed thus far is your Paper Mario video.
That was my junior year self right there. I do love Paper Mario. That was why I covered it early. Except for the Super Paper Mario video, which is actually our literal worst video because I didn't understand how storage worked on computers at the time. So I want all the footage is like super choppy as a result of like a misencoding or something like that. But yeah, that one that I had a different style back in the early days where I was focused much more on providing genuine, insightful commentary instead of just ridiculing everything, which I realize is both more fun and people enjoy watching it more for the most part. I try to blend the two now, generally like a mix of comedy and review. Uh, but I like the old style as well. It's kind of nice. It's less angry, maybe maybe, which is in the new video. The funny thing is, since the worst stuff starts at the beginning, people a common misconception people make is that we hate every game we cover because we start off talking about the worst thing in the game. So I'll be screaming, just I usually love the games. That's why I'm covering it in the first place. But nothing's perfect, so it's kind of an amusing misconception is that we're these. Both of us are these like furious, constantly steam shooting out of our ears, like cartoon characters. Uh, but it's also a little bit exaggerated for the tube. You know, we're both actually very mellow people in real life, so it's kind of a funny detail.
Yeah, and your Halloween special was pretty funny as well.
Oh, you saw that that one. In retrospect, I'm really that took me so long to make. But the hard part, of course, to recommend is that it makes no sense at all unless you also watched our Sonic '06 review video, which is like a prequel to that. So otherwise, all the live action skit segments are incomprehensible. You have me playing a character in my underwear, walking around 45 seconds in, and people are like, "What's going on here? This isn't Sonic '06. This is some guy like doing a bit or something." So that one I'm very proud of, but in retrospect, I would have probably reduced the amount of live action stuff, at least at the start, and not front loaded it that way with exposition. But yeah, that was kind of a passion project because I love movies, horror movies especially. So it was kind of a parody of a number of slasher films, and I have all sorts of weird memorabilia. I have this skull mechanical thing I got somewhere to store, just decorating my room.
Well, yeah, well, I definitely hope, like I said, that, viewers definitely, tune in. But last but certainly not least for this discussion, I want to allow for you to go ahead and close us out with a final thought, whether that be a life lesson, inspirational thought, or whatever the case may be. The floor is all yours, Alex.
All right, parting thoughts. That's a big piece of advice there. I would say do your best to be conscientious of how your messages are received more so than how they exist in your head. People think differently than you, and that's one of the biggest things to know about. This is important to any sphere, just personal relationships, life, is people will see things differently. And the sad truth is that this pertains to identity as well, as how the view of you have of yourself in your head is not very often totally congruent with how people see you. And you'll never know perfectly how people see you because very rarely will people just honestly tell you everything they think about you. That'd probably be terribly offensive for one. Uh, but you can kind of tell based on just fostering an environment where people feel comfortable to tell you just, things they like about you, things they wish you didn't do, things like that. Be open to that and pay attention to what other people say also. Being a good listener goes a long ways. That was something I had to learn since I used to talk endlessly and people would complain like that I just never shut up. And that irritates people. No one likes listening to people, at least when they're first meeting them for like a super long time without getting any chance to input at all. So I guess being conscientious, both of yourself and of how other people work, is like one of the most important things I've found recently in terms of life development.
Well, that's definitely good to know, and I think that's just such a great way for us to, like I said, to come full circle and close out this discussion. But like I said, Alex, this has been so fun, and I mean, I have really enjoyed this conversation, and definitely please keep in touch.
Oh, for sure. Thank you, my friend. It has been an honor. I'll be around on LinkedIn liking everyone's posts.
I love that. And for those watching or listening, thank you so much for tuning in, as always, to the Tansson Talk Show. Be sure to tune in every Saturday, and I can't wait to speak to you next week. Yeah. Well, definitely enjoy your day, and we'll continue on our mission to bring people together. Bye.
Awesome. Bye.